show about Rhode Island and the people and places and events that make Rhode Island a great place to live and that build our communities. We have someone here today with us who I have wanted to talk to for a long time, Curt Columbus, the artistic director of Trinity Rep here in Providence, but really all over Rhode Island and possibly all over New England. We welcome you here, Curt, and thank you for being here. I read a quote of yours recently that says, or I shouldn't say recently, I read it several years ago, which is why I wanted to talk to you. And you said that theater makes us better citizens and builds community. Yes. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. So
I'd love that. Thank you, Juliana. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. So when we start out, we usually ask people what they have done, how they've been trained, what drew them to the job that they have now that's building Rhode Island. So could you tell us briefly what you have done? I know it's a lot.
Well, I mean, I started actually my interest in theater as a child, and I was in Shakespeare productions when I was 10, 11, and 12, and I think I got the bug when I was doing those kinds
Malvolio
of... I was actually Macbeth when I was 12. And it was the moment when I was in 6th grade and two little 3rd grade girls came up to me. I have to preface this. I was not the most attractive 6th grader that ever lived. I was sort of sausage shaped and stuffed into these little clothes and big giant Coke bottle glasses. And my mom had gotten me contact lenses to play Macbeth. And so after the performance, two little 3rd grade girls came up and said, "Can we have your autograph?" And I was pretty much after that, I was done. I mean, that was what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
I wonder if they know what effect they had on you.
I'm sure I can't even remember who they are now. But in any event, I went to college thinking that I would put it all behind me. I was going to be a doctor. And I got there, and within, a week, I was working on my first play. So I just really never stopped. I studied Russian, went and lived in what was then Leningrad in the Soviet Union, and was supposedly studying Russian, but actually was taking acting classes while I was there. I mean, I've just never not done it. And in 1986, I moved to Chicago. And Chicago is a very interesting theater community because the people there don't get rich or famous, they just get really good. And it's a community-based theater environment. So the people who work there are really interested in making work for their community. And that has stuck with me. And we came here in 2006, January 1st, 2006, which is now incredibly 8 years ago. And we've been really, really happy here in Rhode Island.
You live in Pawtucket.
I do.
And you help to build community there by walking down the street and talking to people.
Absolutely. No, I mean, my neighborhood in Pawtucket is one of the great gifts, actually, that we've gotten since we moved here. We're very involved in Pawtucket City politics, actually. My husband's on the Waterfront Commission for Pawtucket. Yeah, you didn't even know there was one.
I know. I'm trying to think about the geography.
And so there's a bunch of ways in which we're really involved in Pawtucket, and it's a great place to live.
So Trinity Rep comes to mind for everyone who talks about being in Providence or talks about coming to Providence.
That's nice.
They know about Trinity Rep.
That's nice.
Let's start first with Rep, Trinity Rep.
Yes.
Repertory theater.
Yes. So the notion, the theater was founded on the notion of having a repertory company of actors. Actors who would be resident here and who would be involved in all of the plays. And so Adrian Hall, when he started the theater in 1963, said, "I really, really need a group of actors who will be committed to living in Rhode Island." And he found those actors, and many of whom have gone on to be really famous and, work in New York and Los Angeles. And but he wanted a repertory company of actors who could be in one show and in the next show and in the next show, and that you would never think of them as the same person. They would always be bold in their characterizations and bring you a whole range of work, but then also live in the community and work in the community. And so that's been one of the things that we've maintained. And in fact, we're one of the last long-standing resident acting companies in America. People who come to see Intimate Apparel right now will get to see Barbara Meek, who has been there for 43 seasons. Nobody else in America gets to say things like that. So I feel very fortunate to have inherited this treasure trove, really, of great actors.
And these actors are in place for the productions, but they are working a lot behind the scenes, doing other things. And maybe you should just start out right from the beginning, talking about every sort of the spectrum of what you do.
Well, so we think of ourselves as a cultural institution, and first as our community's cultural institution. So it's very important to us. Education is not something that we do casually or offhandedly. I mean, it's fundamental to who we are. Project Discovery, which many of your viewers will know, was founded 47 years ago, and it's helped bring theater and education to over 1.5 million students in Rhode Island and southern New England. So that's no small project.
No.
That is fundamental to who we are. We continue to do that. Tens of thousands of students every year come into our building, and we reach them by going to teach them in their schools. So, for example, my actors are also teachers. That's one of the qualities that I want in them and encourage in them. And so when we have student groups that are getting access to the shows, the actors will actually go into the classroom and teach the classes, and it's a great gift. So it's that kind of work, it's that kind of community involvement. It's being involved with some of our other partner nonprofits, because we partner with the Rhode Island Community Food Bank, with DARE, with the Rhode Island Coalition for the Homeless. We've got lots of nonprofit partners, and so our actors are involved not only in that, but in the other theaters around the city and the state. And we continue to be what I like to think of as a site for civic discourse. The quote that you referenced right at the beginning, a place where people can come and have a really vibrant discussion about what's going on with them in their lives today through the lens of great theater.
Maybe you want to talk about the production that's going on now, because it's talking about people who write letters to each other and the ways that those letters change them and the way those letters are changed.
Yeah. Well, it's a wonderful play. It's called Intimate Apparel. It was written by Lynn Nottage, who's a graduate of Brown University. I believe she's class of '86. And it's been produced in other places in the country, but we've added some new company members this year, as you've noticed, and as I'm sure other people have, and a wonderful young woman by the name of Mia Ellis, who just graduated from our Brown Trinity MFA program in acting and directing about 3 years ago. Mia is now a part of our company, and the play was chosen because she is so exquisite for this role. It's a lyrical love story, and as you say, these two people fall in love through letter writing, through this epistolary relationship that they start, and it comes to fruition, and that's the play. But what's interesting about it is that we've had audiences say, this play feels very present tense, because of course a lot of people meet on the internet now, and that the letter writing that they do now is email writing. And sometimes you don't even know the person that you're chatting with until you meet them months later. And it's very much like the play. So people have talked about how that issue, that very present tense issue, is in this play that's set in 1904. And we have post-show discussions after every show, so the audience gets to talk back. And to me, that's fundamental to wanting to make live art. You want the audience response. Otherwise, you'd make film.
And people sit there thinking, oh, he doesn't want to hear what I have to say. But the truth is, everyone has a reaction that is really important to the overall community that's built as you watch the play.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the virtue of live art. We don't really have a site in our culture anymore for discourse. And by discourse, I don't mean where you show up and everybody agrees with you. That's not how you build a democracy, right? You build a democracy on discourse, on the idea that you and I may not agree on a range of issues, but we have a dialogue and we move together as Americans forward into making something else. Theater, by its virtue of being a live art form, is a perfect site for democratic discussion, because you can sit there, and you and I don't know each other outside. We're sitting next to each other in the theater. We don't know each other in our lives, but what we have is the ability to talk about something after the show in a vibrant way, where we don't all have to.
Well, it's a common experience. You've come together by a common experience.
Exactly. So it's what we used to do when we all went to church. It's what we used to do when we all had public meeting places. But in a world of internet and video games and things that constantly try to isolate us, it's live art that saves us from that isolation. So that's what we're trying to do.
And the characters are built as we watch them, and the depths of emotion is plumbed as they live out their character, and
That's right.
We then, in turn, if we believe Aristotle, are living out our own theater as well, or our own emotions as well.
Which you
it's transforming us.
Exactly, because it's located in you. The story isn't located. Film locates the story on a screen, right? And so film is, you leave a film and everybody sort of shuffles out quietly, and maybe you're talking to the people that you came with, but you rarely talk about it with the people that saw the movie with you. Theater encourages that discourse because it locates the story in the audience, right? And so film gives you everything. You don't have to fill anything in. But in theater, we're watching a play, and we know it's not real because it's happening right in front of us. So there's no attempt to make it quote unquote real. There's in fact this idea that if you don't show up, the play doesn't exist, right? So the audience is always the actor that gets cast at the last moment. And that's, as you say, what Aristotle's talking about. The play lives inside of you and transforms us from within.
I also believe, if we don't agree, that there are moments in the play when one forgets oneself. One is completely lost in the characters that one is looking to. And I suppose, basically, as observers, we relate more to one character than to another. But we begin to take on the learning of that person as we are watching. So we are losing ourselves for that time, but then can use that information in dealing with our own lives. That's what I believe, anyway.
It's why we watch family drama, right? It's because our own family drama.
Downton Abbey.
Yeah. Well, you watch it because you can't unpack your own family drama, right? If you could, therapists would be out of business. So, in fact, what the theater does is it gives you space for considering how families deal with their drama. And that's why we like those plays and why we return to them over and over and over again.
Improvisation. You go away with your troupe in the summer, and you really talk through everything that you're going to do in the next year, or not do, throw out, and then you improvise around that, talk about the meanings of them, the societal implications. That sounds amazing, like an amazing process.
Thank you. I mean, when I arrived here, I had always wanted to be at the head of a resident acting company because the opportunity to be resident with a bunch of artists seemed like a great gift. I mean, Shakespeare made all of his plays for a company of artists. Molière made all of his plays for a company of artists. Chekhov made all of his plays for a company of artists. Carol Churchill makes all of her plays for a company of artists. To have this group of people who fund and inform an artistic dialogue that doesn't happen over 4 weeks or 2 months, which is what happens if you job actors in from other places, but over years, is just the greatest gift that you can have. for artists. So what we do in these summer workshops is we bring in new work and try to read it out loud and hear it together and plan for what we're going to do seasons in the future so that it can develop and be nurtured over time by and for a community of artists and for our community of audience. So it's a very, I always think of us as being like the local food or the locally made movement, right? Because we have a low carbon footprint. We use the resources that we have on hand, and we make wonderful and delicious things at the end. So that's
good summary. You're watching Good News Rhode Island, and we're talking today with Curt Columbus, the artistic director of Trinity Rep, and the man behind a lot of the ideas that have made it such a wonderful place to go and such a wonderful resource in the community. So you would say that almost everything informs your productions.
Yes.
So every experience that the actor has had in life, every experience that each audience member has had, the context that's going around the average, the ambient noise that's in society, and also what's happening in the stage itself are all factors. So every play must be different, and every act, every evening is different.
Every evening is different. That's the thing that's so exciting about the theater, is that some nights you'll see a play and think, oh my gosh, this element was really featured. And that's partially because that audience showed up that night, and that was the element that the audience really featured, So it is, that's what I love about live art, because it's so exciting. It's literally being created for you in the moment, never to be created again. Because of that, as you say, that confluence of events that sort of brings the thing together in a way that never has happened before and never will happen again. It's also, you're raising an interesting point. We think of play texts as being these fixed objects, but they never are. They're always changed, or they're always inscribed upon by the actors that fill them, right? It's why we can go see Hamlet over and over and over again, because each Hamlet is different. It's why we can see As You Like It over and over again. Each Rosalind is different. There is no such thing as a definitive performance. And so you want to show up. And just an anecdote. Someone was talking to me about a production of Twelfth Night that we did years ago, long before I was here. And Viola Davis was in it, and she was Olivia, and they said, I had never seen the play that way until I saw her in that part.
That's true.
Right? And then we did it a decade later with almost 2 decades later with a very different Olivia, and the play was very different. And so I had an audience member talk about comparing those two Olivias and being able to have that conversation with herself over time. And that's such an enormous gift. It's one of the reasons why we go to the theater and see a play multiple times, because each time it's inscribed by the actors who are part of it. And it's inflected by what's going on in the world. We did Grapes of Wrath this fall. That production was unparalleled in its community impact, because we've had so many home foreclosures in the state. And so a play about 1937 Dust Bowl suddenly became a very different play in the room with these people that are having their homes foreclosed. We had an evening with labor leaders one night, and they all talked about the labor issues in the play. So that wouldn't have been true a decade ago. That's only true now in our current moment. And so a play that's about the past is really written on by the present.
And the people that are there are learning about their own life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's great.
Okay, now, in some plays, and some people who are traditionalists would rather see a Shakespeare play in Shakespeare garb, whatever. But what is the advantage of changing the costume, changing the look of the stage to the point where the set would not be recognizable to the playwright, but has something to say to the present audience?
Well, there are a couple of, I always point out when people say, oh, I prefer the traditional Shakespeare dress. Well, Shakespeare did his plays in modern dress, right? They didn't have costumes in Shakespeare's era. They wore the costumes of the nobility. They were cast-offs, basically. The clothes that the nobility no longer wore, they'd give to the actors. Okay, so what did that mean? It meant that if I'm playing Queen Elizabeth in Richard III, and I walk in a particular style of costume, the audience immediately knows, without being told, that I'm royal, right? What's lost when you do it in a traditional setting is that immediate text is invisible to the audience. Because some people are like, I don't know, is she a serving wench or is she a queen? They don't know the difference. So the advantage of taking Shakespeare and providing another layer of text for the audience to read, right? So costume and set and lights and sound provide layers of text that are not the play, if you will. And
is that saying that's a commentary by the producer, or is it actually in the text?
I think a good production finds within the text the thing that it wants to bring out, right? So, when we did Merchant of Venice several years ago, we really went into the text and sat with it and sort of thought, what are the elements that want to be visible immediately to the audience when they enter the room? And the fact that these are Venetian Jews living in a ghetto was really important to us, because I always I keep within me this notion of never forget, right? That you can't forget what has happened in the past if you want to know how to live the present or the future. And so the fact that it's 16th century or 15th century Jews in a ghetto in Venice has a lot of 20th and 21st century resonances. And so we tried to create a production that allowed those references to still be visible to the audience.
You have a great variety of plays that you put on.
I do.
And you choose those purposefully, obviously.
I do. Yeah. I really want people to go on a journey with us every time. And I want each journey to be different. I like to travel, and I like to go to different locations every time I travel, because I want to find something new. I want to discover something new. Not just about where I'm going, but discover something new about myself, right? The theater presents us with the same opportunity. You get to travel to, limitless locations without ever leaving Rhode Island. And so the range of work that we do is purposeful. I want people every time, just like you wouldn't make a meal and serve soup for every course, right? So you may make the best cauliflower soup in the world. But if you had people show up and have cauliflower soup for the first course, the second course, the third course, and the dessert, they wouldn't like cauliflower soup very much. So the theater is the same. The season that we program is the same thing. There has to be a range of work in order for the audience to every time feel like they're getting a good meal.
And you're trying to provide that, as well as that, telling them to eat across the street.
I know.
Whatever.
It's true.
Rhode Island and Providence particularly must be absorbing all of this. It must be a community that accepts this, although the average person may not even take part.
Right.
So what is it about the Providence community that allows you to be here?
It's very interesting, because I in the 8 years that we've been here, I've gotten closer and closer to my colleagues in the art scene, and I have really important friendships now. And there's this remarkable depth of bench of artists who have stayed in Rhode Island. I don't know, for me, the reason that I'm here and that I love being here is the quality of life, the quantity of cultural opportunities, and the access to the knowledge economy, the universities. That means that we have an informed public, informed consumers who want cultural offerings, and then you have this group of artists who make their homes here, who are so extraordinary and world class. Right around the corner from us, we have AS220, which is the unjuried and uncensored art space, and you see art there that you couldn't find in galleries in New York for 100 times the price. You see music programs there that are as avant-garde as anything. Trinity doesn't just offer its main stage programming, but we have our Brown Trinity MFA program in acting and directing, and in our Pell Chafee performance space, we do performances that are not the mainstream of our programming. So there's just in Trinity alone, there's a diverse range of programming that you could consume. And it's that I think is unparalleled in my experience anywhere else in the country. Why here? I can't tell you, but man, it's great.
It's like the Renaissance.
It really is.
In some ways.
Yeah.
I need to ask you, coming up at Trinity Rep, this is your time.
Great. Well, so we've still got intimate apparel, which we were talking about earlier. I really want to encourage people to come and see that. It's just a deliciously beautiful, poetic love story, and a story about empowerment, too, that I think is, never gets old. Coming up, starting on Sunday, we have Oliver, which is the Lionel Bart musical, directed by Richard and Sharon Jenkins, long-time artists at Trinity Rep. Richard's back for the first time in over a decade. Sharon has never left and is one of the greatest, again, you're talking about artistic treasures, artists that are in this community. Sharon's one of the greatest artists that Rhode Island has. So the two of them working together to bring Oliver to life. And, this is, because it's Trinity, we're really interested in the text of the play, which talks about child poverty and talks about the fact that children don't have families. Unfortunately, that's still a very, very pressing issue in our time. So the play, while being entertaining and beautiful and funny and musical, it's also going to have this really powerful subtext to it.
And the same was true, both plays tend to redefine family,
yes.
in my opinion.
Yes, yes.
So all dance, all music, all thinking about ourselves happens when we take part in the arts. Is that something you would agree? We have 1 second.
I absolutely agree with that, and I hope everyone will take advantage of the broad range of cultural offerings in Rhode Island, and it is truly, truly unique in that way.
Thank you, Curt, for being here. Curt Columbus from Trinity Rep, and I'm Juliana Anderson, and I hope that good news is in your community. I'm sure that it is, and probably you helped make it. Thank you for watching. It goes very fast.